trainee to have gastric bypass surgery. And now it's her brother Martin's turn to go under the knife to lose weight.
No one held a gun to my head and said, put that cream donut in your face. That's just the way it happens.
Will this super morbidly obese brother and sister manage to lose the weight that is threatening their lives?
Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth.
And how life has changed for the vicar who's lost an astonishing 13 stone in just over a year.
I hated my body. I hated my body.
Expect graphic scenes of gastric bypass surgery on Fat Doctor. The British are now the second fattest people in the developed world, overshadowed only by the giant girth of Americans. There are now a staggering 24 million obese and overweight people in Britain. We're eating more and exercising less, and the problem is spiralling out of control. Over 12 million people in the UK are currently on a diet, but only 1 in 5 of us will successfully lose weight. For the rest, it's a losing battle. No matter how hard they try, they just can't get rid of the fat.
It's the most horriblest thing in the world, being big. I hate it.
I would myself like to lose half my body weight.
I don't want to be fat. I would love to be thin.
We are facing an obesity epidemic, and as a last resort, some of Britain's biggest are turning to this man. Shaw Summers is a bariatric surgeon who performs major surgery that can shrink a stomach to the size of an egg. Every day, he sets out to change and even save people's lives. Shaw performs operations on some of Britain's biggest, who go under his knife in a desperate bid to shed the pounds.
You do get the feeling that sometimes you are the person just holding back a tide of demand.
It's major bariatric surgery with many risks attached, and is a last resort for these patients when all else has failed. But the change it makes to people's lives can be dramatic.
The psychological change in people is absolutely astounding. They feel they've got their life back. They have their confidence again. They don't feel that they're outside society anymore, being stared at by normal people. And for me, that is possibly one of the most gratifying changes that comes about from successful weight loss surgery.
Here are some of the men and women for whom this life-saving surgery has worked. These are Shaw's former patients at their annual reunion.
Started off 33.5 stone, and in nearly 9 months I've lost just over 12 stone, 148 inches, so it's pretty good. It's pretty good, life-changing.
I came in at 20 stone 13. I'm now 14.5 stone, so I have lost 6.5 stone. I've lost just about 7 stone. It's really has changed my life.
Before surgery, discrimination had almost destroyed their lives.
Before I used to get called loads of horrible names, sort of people going past and all you're fat, this, that and the other,
All the words that fat, lazy, dumb, stupid always go with the word fat. All that discrimination's gone. You just get so much life back.
I had a few admiring glances from when I've been walking out, whereas before people would look at me with disgust. That takes a bit of getting used to because you still think they're taking the mickey.
38-year-old Martin Gibbs has made it down to his local beach. This is a rare trip out for him. He spends most of his time indoors and prefers to venture out when there's no one else around. Weighing almost 35 stone, Martin is the heaviest he's ever been, and he can't stop piling on the pounds.
Sometimes people will ask, are you this fat for a reason? Do you have a problem with metabolism or whatever? And my simple answer to that is no, I don't. I think I may be genetically predisposed to putting on fat. And certainly, this fat hasn't just magicked itself onto my frame. I've overeaten, I've over-consumed drink, and, when I do overeat, probably if I overeat on lettuce, it'd be all right, but I overeat on the wrong foods. I know that I'm doing it. Intellectually, I know that it's the wrong food for me and the results of eating it, but I can't stop it. So yes, I am this size through my own fault. No one held a gun to my head and said, put that cream donut in your face. That's just the way it happens.
Martin was a normal-sized child and still had a slim build in his teens. Then, in his 20s, things began to change. Food began to play a big role in his life.
The second year at college, I really didn't want to be there, didn't enjoy the sort of the academic life. And it was living away from home, albeit, you know, it was in Plymouth, it was by the sea, but, you know, I'm a homebody and by family tradition we're that way. And I guess looking back on it and knowing now what I know about depression, I was depressed. And probably that was the start of comfort eating. You know, just drinking too much, going out having Chinese takeaways, or, you know, just buying too much convenience food and eating it, and not doing enough exercise, purely and simply down to that, I think.
Martin, increasingly unhappy, dropped out of college. He eventually got a job for a computer company, but it was to become the lowest period of his life. Bullied at work, Martin spiralled into deeper depression, and the only comfort was food.
Breakfast is consistent. I always have porridge, then a snack mid-morning, and that could be anything from a sandwich to a Cornish pasty, or, you know, a Mars bar or two, or, you know, something like that. Lunch is usually a couple of rounds of sandwiches. Tend to have a snack in the afternoon, you know, biscuits or cake with cups of tea, and then a sort of a cooked meal in the evening, meat and 2 veg, that sort of thing. And then I'd probably eat something, you know, after that before I go to bed as well. You know, a pasty or ice cream, and by ice cream obviously I mean a tub, not just a spoonful or two. Again, portions are usually quite large, whichever I do sort of settle on. You know, if I'm going to have a packet of crisps, I'll have a packet of crisps, not a packet of crisps. And, you know, if I'm going to have a Mars bar, then I'll probably need to wash that down with a Twix and a Topic and a few other, you know, bits of chocolate as well. You know, I can go to the shop with the best of intentions just to buy an item, but I can never come away with just one item. There'll always have to be a few. Where do you want it?
Martin lives next door to his parents, Mary and Nigel, near Brighton. As Martin's weight piled on, they became increasingly worried, but felt helpless to tackle him about it.
It was almost a you can't tell me what to do. You're my parent, but you can't tell me anymore because I'm adult. It was very hard, and still is hard, because you want the best for them, and you can see maybe that's not the best for them, but they have to find it in their own way.
I thought, oh no, he's not really trying hard enough. You know, it was a feeling. I wasn't angry, but I was upset, I think. I was upset because of what it was doing to him. I was upset because of what it was doing to us. I just felt that if there was some way I could get through to him.
I did get comments from family members as well, in terms of, you know, not ridiculing me, but just, you know, we're worried about your weight. But perversely, you know, if you get people saying to you, you know, you're overweight, you need to lose weight, it actually almost encourages you to go and eat more. You know, my family said it to me, my grandmother, my GP, and actually, you know, I would sort of go into, you know, la 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 la, not listening, and that was how I dealt with it. Sometimes I'd be motivated to go on a diet and would lose some weight, but I could never sort of maintain the enthusiasm for too long, and then it will be piled back on again in short order.
Life is basically on hold for Martin as he struggles to control his weight. Depression over his size means he rarely leaves the house. He simply cannot break the vicious circle of chronic depression and eating. Martin tries to avoid public places for fear of comments about his size, and on the rare occasions he does go out, he prefers to stay in his car.
I tend to be quite housebound. I don't like to go out, which is, you know, it's not, you know, I've always been an outdoors person, you know, so that's been quite difficult. But even though it's sort of, you know, it's difficult to accept that it's happening, by the same token, I can't do anything about it. Which is why sort of getting out of the car for the little drive here and there is sort of helps keep you sane. When I do go out, it's easier to go in the car because, you know, you've got a shield around you. People can't see you so well, and, you know, you certainly can't see how you're built when you're sitting in a car. And, you know, so you don't get the hurtful comments and pointing and staring and this sort of thing. So, you know, it's a safe way to get out of the house. If I need to do sort of shopping, I'll use the internet. Both Tesco's and Sainsbury's do home deliveries, our local shops. I will occasionally venture out to somewhere like Marks and Spencer's, but usually late at night, just before it shuts, when there won't be anybody there.
Martin's visiting his parents for a family meal. It's painful for Mary and Nigel to watch the decline of their son's physical and mental health. But this is only part of their grief.
I just can't stand up very well at the moment, so...
At 32 stone, their daughter Daniella is also supermorbidly obese.
You're right with the mess, Dad.
Like her older brother Martin, 34-year-old Daniella was slim until her late teens, when a distressing period in her life triggered comfort eating.
When I was about 18, I was a nanny for 3 months and put on 3.5 stone. It was a lonely time, and I comfort ate just to bury my feelings of loneliness. My self-esteem was knocked from this experience. I was sent to a health farm for a month by my grandmother. She was always coming up with new ways of trying to make me lose weight, and actually it was the last thing I needed at that time. I needed to be with family and friends, and yet there was more isolation, and it really impacted on my and reinforced my comfort eating behaviours.
Daniella's weight escalated and had a devastating effect on her self-esteem. She too became afraid to leave the house, scared of the taunts and spiteful comments she'd get from strangers. Then her comfort eating took on a more disturbing edge.
It turned into punishment, and I would reinforce what people had said about me by eating, and you know, it would be, yes, I am ugly, yes, I am fat, yes, I should hide. On one particular occasion, I went into the ladies in one pub, and there were 3 girls in there, and they turned around and looked at me and said, oh, we've got to get out of here, there's no room now. And I just burst into tears, and when I went home, I started eating enough just to reinforce, you know, I shouldn't have been seen out in public, really. It's still, you know, people that I don't know and will never see again, still have, I hold in my heart. It's ridiculous. And that's the effect that people have, and they don't realise how much they hurt. And it's just, you know, other people have they've ruined my life to date. But they won't. I'll have the last laugh. I will. I won't let them beat me, but it's been really horrible. I just, you know, food is, I use food as such a powerful tool in my life.
Having both their children suffer from supermorbid obesity has taken Mary and Nigel to breaking point emotionally.
I do think we did find it surprising and shocking that both the children were obese.
That's right.
And not just obese, but super obese.
You know, we think, well, where did we go wrong? What part did we play in the kids ending up as they have? And it's very difficult to find any sort of concrete reasons why they ended up this way.
And actually, it's very distressing. As well. We've both shed tears over both of them because we just couldn't see how it was going to end, and I think we both felt that it was going to have a very bad ending for both of them.
That's reason enough.
Like when she was born.
Putting behind her the years of failed diets and unhappiness, Daniella recently decided to take drastic action.
We might be able to reuse it. No, I suppose we're not.
Just 3 weeks ago, Daniella had a gastric bypass operation. Her husband is currently working abroad, so she's staying with her parents while she recuperates. It's time for Mary to change the dressing. So far, so good. The scar's healing well.
It's nearly a part of me, but not quite.
I decided to go for the gastric bypass because I was becoming dependent on people for doing things, and I'm talking about my care, as in sort of washing parts of me. And I've only been married 2 years, and I don't want that for my husband. I didn't marry him for him to be a nurse, to care for me like that.
Careful, because you might float forward and dunk your beer.
Daniella's so far lost a staggering 2.5 stone in the 3 weeks since her operation.
My chin was one of the areas I hated most, and I've lost just over an inch off my chin. And my rings, I couldn't wear my engagement ring before, so I can wear them both now, and they're both loose, which is lovely. Another thing that I really like is that I can actually see daylight in between my toes, which I think is just fabulous. It's just the little things like that are brilliant, absolutely superb.
Yeah, we've got our own little club.
For a while, Martin's been considering having gastric bypass surgery himself. Now that he's seen the change in his sister, he's hoping surgery could be the answer to his problems too.
Anyway, it's nearly your turn. I can feel it coming on.
Yes. If certain people can pull it.
Today, he has an initial appointment to see surgeon Shaw Summers at his clinic for overweight people.
Hi there.
It's an anxious time.
Thank you. Hello again.
The consultation will determine whether Shaw thinks Martin is healthy enough to go ahead with the operation.
So Martin, are you at your biggest now?
Yeah.
Okay. Any diets work for you?
I was a member of Slimming World for a year or so and did lose some weight. But found it very difficult
What's
to sort of...
the most you've ever lost in a diet?
About 3 stone.
Mm-hmm. And how long can you keep that off for before it all starts to creep back?
Not long at all. I mean, it's sort of, whilst I'm losing the 3 stone, obviously I'm still losing, but as soon as I get bored with the diet or whatever, then it sort of goes on.
Right, okay.
Back on with a vengeance.
Back on with a bit. It's called yo-yoing.
Yes.
Welcome to the yo-yo club.
Yes.
General health?
Where to start? Type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
Hypertension. And depression.
For which you're taking the usual cocktail of drugs?
Yes. One of the things with my diabetes, because I can't control my eating, the diabetes still isn't under control, and I've progressed now on to sort of, the maximum lots of
so it's
level
not going to be long before you'll be on insulin if you're not careful.
And if I can avoid that.
Okay.
My fear of needles isn't quite great enough to overcome the eating.
The interesting side effect of this kind of surgery is that your diabetes tends to go away very quickly. Now, we don't understand exactly why that should be, but it does work. And I think for you, at your weight, that is really the overriding consideration. We've got to get control of the illnesses that the weight is causing.
Yeah. I'm short of sort of chopping my hands off it. I can't think of a way of stopping myself eating. And, goodness knows I've tried.
I can. It's called a bypass.
Well, that's the thing. I need that physical...
Yeah, that restriction.
The restriction to sort of stop me.
Okay. I'm happy to offer you that. Do you have any questions for me? Anything you want to ask?
So Shaw has given the go-ahead. It's good news for Martin, and especially good news for Mary.
And I long to have my children back, because they're great, lively, bubbly people, and it's quite strange to have them, as they are now, not wanting to go out and just being at home.
Okay. We can do that for you.
Great.
All right, Martin.
Thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
Come and get it, supper's ready.
With his operation scheduled for 5 weeks' time, Martin decides to make the most of eating as much as he wants, while he still can.
Make the most of it then.
Yes.
But he knows his addiction to food is going to be a difficult hurdle to overcome.
It may be a controversial notion of being addicted to food, whether it's to the carbohydrates or just to the physical act of putting food in your mouth, chewing it, swallowing it, and the feeling that that gives you. The usual comment that's thrown is, well, you know, why don't you just diet and lose weight? Well, if it was that easy, then there wouldn't be a third of the population overweight or obese. You know, it really isn't that simple. I mean, you don't say to an alcoholic, well, why don't you just give up the drink? Or someone who's addicted to heroin or cocaine, or just stop taking the drug. You know, it just isn't that easy. It is a physical addiction to many people for whatever reason, and it just isn't as easy as, oh well, just stop eating then. You know, there's all sorts of help and support provided to drug addicts, and maybe to a lesser extent it seems alcoholics, and you know, when someone gives up an addiction to smoking or to drink, you can actually have a sort of a final cut-off, and you know, okay, so it's X number of days since I stopped whatever I was addicted to. You can't do that with food. You know, you have to eat to live, be it a small amount or a larger amount. You know, so you can't ever just put food to one side and say, right, I've done with that, I'll put that behind me now and move on. You have to eat every day. You know, and if you sort of said to most alcoholics, you know, okay, you don't have to give up completely, you can have a few shots of whiskey every day, how long would they be able to maintain just, you know, 3 whiskies a day before they completely went off the rails?
Potato salad.
You can't ever just put food to one side and say, right, I've done with that, I'll put that behind me now and move on. You have to eat every day.
Having his stomach stapled to the size of an egg is going to mean a dramatic lifestyle change for Martin.
So, Mark, what are you going to have for your condemned man's last meal?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it too much. Steak, possibly. A large fillet.
Oh, yeah, it's got to be fillet.
Whole fillet, obviously.
Whole fillet.
Not just one steak off the end.
Well, we'll buy a cow. I think you're ready for the shock that's going to come to you. You're going to be quite surprised.
I'll miss having, you know, large hamburgers and, you know, big barbecues, but there's then the flip side. Well, if you don't have it done, you know, the chances are you'll be dead in 10 years anyway. So, you know, I suppose I've done enough eating and drinking already to last a couple of lifetimes, so, you know, we just have to be more sensible in future.
Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth.
Coming up, we meet the vicar who's lost an astonishing 13 stone in just over a year.
I hated my body. I hated my body. But the problem was I knew it was the body God had given me, and I'd messed it up. And for me, being that overweight was so wrong.
It's the moment that 35-stone Martin Gibbs has been waiting for. Today, he's having the gastric bypass operation, which he hopes will help him lose up to a breathtaking 20 stone. Without surgery, his weight will almost certainly kill him.
Afternoon, Martin.
Afternoon, Short.
Nice to see you again.
See you.
Now then, young man, today's the day.
Yeah.
You understand we're going to radically change the way you eat food for good.
Yeah.
And what we're hoping to do is to make your new stomach and intestines deal with food in a different way, so you will feel full very much quicker.
Yeah.
And if you eat the wrong things, you'll get a reaction called dumping syndrome, whereby you feel weak, nauseated, sweaty, and you just don't like what you've just eaten.
Yeah.
Principally chocolate.
Yes. Well, luckily I've had my guinea pig that I could study.
Yes.
And observe.
Absolutely. Well, Daniella's been a good role model for you.
Now, will post-op, will I, amongst all the other things plugged into me, will I get some sort of fluids? Because I'm getting a bit sort of dehydrated. And
you will get lots of
thirsty,
fluids while you're asleep. Good. Absolutely. We just need to make sure your stomach is well and truly empty, but as soon as you get put to sleep, Dr. Margerson will be giving you plenty of things to drink.
My blood sugars went up and I haven't had anything to eat.
I think that's possibly a result of the stress of knowing what's going to happen to you. Stress does put your blood sugars up a bit.
Right.
Before going under the knife, Martin needs to sign the consent form for surgeon Shaw Summers to operate.
Okay. Right. I need to ask you to sign the yellow form, the dreaded yellow form.
Signing my life away. Hopefully not
right,
literally.
So, if I can start at the top with you, Martin.
Yeah.
You are Martin Gibbs.
I am.
And you've agreed to undergo gastric bypass surgery.
I have.
The intended benefit of which is weight loss.
Yeah.
If I can ask you to sign and date along there, that would be great.
Sure.
I will see you in the operating theatre.
Great.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
See you in a bit.
Only one more hour to go. Fiona Solman has just been ordained deacon for the village of Greetham and is taking her first ever Harvest Festival service. It's a happy time for her. At last, she can celebrate the true meaning of food and harvest time.
Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth.
It's my first Harvest Festival service here, and for me it's particularly significant that we're thanking God for all his blessings. And one of the things he gives us is food, and obviously for me that's a hugely significant issue.
Just over a year ago, Fiona's relationship with food was entirely different, when she weighed a hefty 24 stone. Working then as a health visitor, Fiona was used to preaching the benefits of healthy eating to others, but she failed to take her own advice.
I suppose I've been brought up with the idea that you should never waste food, to eat everything on your plate. But also I was brought up with an attitude that there were certain things that were treats. And food, in some senses, nice food, was a reward. And I suppose that's something when I was going through tough times, I turned to food. Particularly, I think, when I was nursing, you have a rough day on the wards, it's tiring, exhausting. You either grab something that's easy, that's quick, which is not necessarily the healthiest, or you grab something really nice because it's a treat and you make up, and food gradually becomes a comfort.
Fiona tried and failed at numerous diets, and the weight kept creeping on. Although her size was making her increasingly unhappy, she found the best way to cope with the problem was to pretend it didn't exist.
I was 24 stone. And I didn't have mirrors in the house. It was very difficult to find clothes, even shoes that fitted. When I look back at photos of my daughter's wedding and my son's wedding, I feel hideously embarrassed of the shots that show me full on. I feel I spoilt the wedding photos for them. I hated my body because it was so much larger than I wanted to be that I felt it was holding me back from things.
Fiona's first Harvest Festival service is over.
It was really great to enjoy that feeling, standing in church giving thanks for all the wonderful food around us, and really not feel that food is a major issue for me anymore.
It was deciding to become a vicar that was the turning point for Fiona. 3 years ago, her professional life took a radical turn when she gave up health visiting and began a ministerial course. This life change inspired her to finally face up to her eating problems.
I realised I wouldn't be able to cope in Christian ministry if I couldn't face up to issues within myself, and my weight was a huge part of that. If I couldn't face up to such a significant issue in myself, how could I ever be what God wanted me to be in helping other people? So it very much started me thinking, I've got no right to hate my own body. What is the problem with me? And actually facing up to this issue of my weight, which I blocked off from for so long, and trying to work out what I was meant to do about it. And I had really, really struggled. I'd tried diets, I'd tried medication, and I just didn't seem to be able to come up with something that was going to work. For me, weight loss surgery seemed to be the right way to go.
Fiona and her husband Richard are off for a post-service pub lunch. Richard has seen a dramatic change in his wife since her incredible 13-stone weight loss.
I would say that she's just able to do more than she was then, much more able to do. I think it's because she's not so tired, that's for sure. And probably nicer to be with in some ways. She was obviously slightly depressed at the fact that she was, that weight and couldn't do what she wanted to do, whereas now she isn't, so she's much happier.
It's difficult to pick one thing and say what is the best thing about being a more normal weight. I suppose I could describe it as feeling free. I'm actually able to move around more easily. I've started riding a bicycle again. I feel in many ways people aren't judging me like they used to.
Fiona believes that surgery has given her the confidence she needed for her new life.
I hated my body. I hated my body. But the problem was I knew it was the body God had given me, and I'd messed it up. And for me, being that overweight was so wrong. And what's so special is I really feel liberated from that now. And I really feel I can love my body, because it's how God made it. And it's me.
Back in hospital, 35-stone Martin Gibbs is counting the hours until his gastric bypass operation. His younger sister Daniella had the same procedure just 2 months ago, and the whole family have come to offer support.
How was your night? Was it all right?
Hot is how it was.
Love you.
Yes, never mind.
Well, maybe we can bring up one of your fans.
That might be a very good idea, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, a proper vegans at the end of the bed. Hello, Mama.
Get out of the way.
Yes, fine, thanks.
Do you want to do
Hello, mate. All right. Good morning. Good morning.
I bought a little friend.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Bought the cat with you?
Yeah, no live animals from that, I'm afraid. I just loved his big bulbous tummy. I
Big
thought it was
fat
a bit
belly.
like yours.
Yes.
So, are you nervous, Mart?
Not at all.
Are you
No.
not?
No.
See, when I was in, I had a real butterflies in my stomach, just to make you feel slightly better. I was crying, and you know, and sort of quite scared for my life, really. And you're just not feeling any of that now.
No.
Good Lord.
Well, the way I'm approaching it is if anything goes wrong, I'm not going to know about it because I'm asleep, so...
That's true.
I've got anything to worry about. It's not going to hurt.
No, not going to hurt you.
Not going to hurt me.
Just other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was looking forward to having a good old crying session with you and all.
Yeah, no.
All right.
The height of embarrassment.
All right.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
As Shaw Summers begins his preparations for surgery, Martin tries to maintain his good humour on the operating table.
Did you want one of those fat things?
Even though Shaw has performed over 400 of these operations, he's always cautious about how they might turn out.
Obesity surgery at this sort of scale is never what I would call straightforward. As always, the operation requires an element of, I wouldn't call it good fortune, but an element of fair wind to enable it to go smoothly.
There is risk in any operation, and the team prepare Martin for surgery carefully.
I think Martin's actually a very lucky patient in that he's got a member of his family that's had the procedure. He's got an idea of what to expect, he knows what the form is, and he's been very well counselled. So from that point of view, I think he'll be easy to look after. He is still going to find it very difficult, as they all do. It's a dietary rehabilitation. They have to learn to eat all over again. So I think for Martin, he's going to have his problems. It's a roller coaster ride. They can't get off. There'll be ups and downs, but at the end of the ride, they will be lighter and different. Knife, please, sister.
Shaw Summers makes the first incision. He then has to split open the layers of fat so he can get to Martin's internal organs.
Okay, fingers in, and pull your way more. And down to the bottom. Fingertips right to the bottom. Pull. Yeah, he's got probably a good 2 inches of fat, and then the muscle and the actual tummy wall's there, and then we've got through the tummy wall, and he's actually got another layer of fat to get through. We are made up of various layers of fat, and big people are no different. They have the same layers, they're just slightly expanded. Time to feel Martin's gallbladder.
The gallbladder stores a fluid called bile, which helps the body break down food. Because Martin will lose weight quickly, he's more likely to get gallstones. Shaw is therefore removing the gallbladder as a preventative measure to ensure Martin won't need further surgery in the future.
Okay, gallbladder coming out. See how long those scissors are? Okay. Up to the handles to actually get them to do anything. Okay, that's his gallbladder. It's a whopper.
Shaw can now set to work on the gastric bypass. The first step is to pull out the omentum, the fatty apron that covers the small intestine. Before he staples Martin's stomach, Shaw has to bypass about 1 metre of the small intestine. This will drastically reduce the amount of calories that Martin's body can absorb.
One day someone will invent a tablet so that I don't have to do this anymore, and it'll be good. I don't relish doing these procedures on people until they get to this kind of state, but all we've got to do is get him to eat sufficiently little to stop him putting weight on, and it seems a shame to actually do an operation like this where you're cutting about a perfectly healthy stomach and intestine just to stop him eating. But there you go. It's the only way, I'm afraid. We've tried everything else and nothing works, and you either let him die or you operate on him. So we just finished the Roux-en-Y loop, the bypass bit. So there's the letter Y, if you can see it. The bottom bit, 2 limbs. Okay, that bit goes to his bottom. That bit comes from the stomach that we're going to defunction, the bottom bit of the stomach. And this piece of bowel up here is going to go all the way up to his little stomach pouch, and he's going to carry the food. So tuck all that back in, it's like a shirt. Okay.
Next, Shaw creates a smaller stomach pouch for Martin.
Right, young Gibbsy, what kind of a stomach are we going to give you? A normal stomach, when it's absolutely full, is about the size of a cantaloupe melon, and what I'm going to give him is the stomach the size of an egg. It's a bit of a difference. Okay, open that up.
The final stage of the operation is joining the bypassed small intestine to the new stomach pouch. From now on, Martin will only ever be able to eat tiny amounts of food. It's a drastic change.
There is always a trade-off with this operation, and whilst it will give them freedom from eating too much food, the trade-off is they're going to have to be careful with their diet and behave and eat the right things, otherwise they will run into medical trouble. And the idea is that we will give them back a near normal life expectancy, but they have to behave themselves.
The 3-hour operation has gone well and according to plan.
The operation has gone fine. Martin's had a straightforward gastric bypass, so he now has a small stomach and the short circuit of his intestines. I've done my bit, it's up to Martin now.
Martin's recovered from his anaesthetic and is desperate to go home.
The staff here are brilliant, but with all due respect, I want to be out of here and seeing them in the rearview mirror as quickly as possible.
Will Martin be able to cope with his new eating regime and behave himself with food? And will the surgery be as life-changing as he hopes? At 35 stone, Martin Gibbs was super-morbidly obese, and his health was deteriorating rapidly. Diets had failed, and a gastric bypass operation was his last hope of being able to lead a normal life. It's the best decision he's ever made.
Well, it's 5 months and a few days since I had my operation, and I've now lost 8 stone 2 pounds, which is 114 pounds in total, and 40% of my excess weight. We bought this treadmill because there is still a little bit of hesitancy to sort of go and exercise in public. It's a little more comfortable, which means you're more likely to do it, and it's toning the muscles a bit, which haven't been used for so long, which hopefully will help with the excess skin situation. Parts of me won't be quite as baggy as perhaps they would be if I didn't exercise, so I'd like to lose about the same again. That would be good.
With his stomach now the size of an egg, Martin has lost the ravenous appetite he couldn't control.
Perhaps the biggest change for me since the operation has been my relationship with food. I'm a lot less dependent upon it now for mood elevation, and I eat an awful lot less of it. These days, typical breakfast will be some protein-enriched porridge or muesli. For lunch, I have these sort of protein nut bars. I struggle to eat a whole one, can take about half an hour, which is different. And now a main meal would be maybe a small can of beans, and that's it. Contrasting to before I had the operation, I would have had a full-size can of beans, 4 to 6 sausages, mound of mashed potato, and whatever pudding I felt like. That is it now. I can't eat more than that at a sitting. I do still find that I have the odd craving for a burger or something maybe that I shouldn't have, but I know that if I eat something that big with that much fat, that, you know, I will have a physical reaction. I will actually vomit it straight back up again, which is not pleasant for me or anyone who happens to be near me at the time.
Martin's ongoing weight loss is resulting in such a physical change to his body that getting dressed each day is a bit of a challenge.
I thought I'd bring you in here and show you what's possibly the only downside, and a very minor one at that, to the whole process of losing weight so quickly. And it's this. It's my 8 dustbin bags full of clothes, which are now so big that you just cannot wear them because they're just not a prayer of looking halfway decent. So I thought I'd just show you this lovely shirt, which just 5 short months ago I was actually wearing, and it did fit me. I think now it's sort of a little bit on the large side, shall we say. So that I will try and find a good home for. And I've also got the same problem with trousers. Again, this is a pair. They were tailor-made, so they did fit like a glove. But now, even the trousers are a little on the big side. I am very happy, which, for those who've known me for a few years, hasn't been the case. And people have commented on the improvement in my mood, how much happier I am generally, and I do notice it myself. I catch myself being happy, which is not something that's happened for a while. It's good. And the only downside is for the first time in almost my whole life I've felt the cold, and it's been a mild winter, but I've had to be throwing on any jumpers and coats that'll fit and turning up the central heating, because I'm used to a certain level of blubber insulating me against the cold, and now I've got less of it. It's causing a problem. But again, what a problem to have. So much better than diabetes, hypertension, diabetic eye disease, depression, you name it. I had the comorbidity and was taking the pills for it. And after 5 months, I haven't taken any of my medications that I was prescribed for diabetes since the operation, not a single tablet. And my blood sugar is below or is in the normal range, and lower than it was whilst I was on the medication.
We've got our own little club.
And it's not just Martin whose life has been transformed by gastric bypass surgery. His sister Daniella has also gone under the knife in a desperate bid to lose weight. And the results are dramatic.
It's been 7 months since my operation. I've lost an amazing 9 stone 8. I can't believe how good I feel. And I wanted to show you exactly what 9 stone 8 looks like. So I thought I'd build it with bricks and stones. And this is what we've done. Ta-da! Can you believe it? It's absolutely amazing. To think that I was carrying this weight around with me all the time, I cannot believe it. I hope that there's more to come, obviously, but this is just such a brilliant start. My life has changed dramatically. The biggest difference to me, there's 2. One, I can move properly now, whereas before I couldn't. It took so much effort. And the other thing is I can go anywhere and people don't look at me anymore. They don't stare, they don't giggle, there's no rude comment, and it's absolutely fantastic. I love it.
Mary and Nigel are thrilled to see the transformation in their children.
It's been absolutely wonderful.
It's great.
And to see the change.
To see the change in them is the most wonderful thing, I think, really. They have this sense of having their life given back to them.
To see young people emerging again, now we can see them as we remember them.
It's almost like a rebirth, a second chance to maybe get it right, and not get myself into the situation I got myself into, being so fat and obese. And I want to make sure that I make the most of it and just have a happier life. And that's what I want, and so far that's what I'm having.